Good evening, America. I am Eric Little. It is the 30th day of October 2020. It is National Speak Up for Service Day. You can do your country the best service by showing up and voting. There are 4 days left to the end of the general election. I'm near my home in Southern California this evening, and this is the plain truth. You know, when I talk to women around the country and I ask them about their problems or they tell me their problems, I tell them the solution to their problems, but they never believe me. Women's biggest problem is other women. You see these guys that cheat on their wives and whatever, but you know, a lot of these women know these guys are married. You know, they don't care about the other woman. You know, there are 435 members of the House of Representatives and 100 members of the Senate and the president and vice president. And why aren't all of those women? There are more women than men. If you stuck together, you should have every single lever of power. Let me tell you why you don't. I was watching this interview with this lady in Michigan yesterday, and they were talking about the coronavirus and how it's just gone crazy and all these new infections and whatnot. And she was at an actual site being tested. It was a drive-through site where they swab your nose and you stay in your car. And so the interviewer, you know, tried to stay far enough away, but he interviewed her and said, you going through all this and you're being coronavirus tested, you know, does this make you, you know, think about maybe who you want to vote for? She said, no, I'm voting for Trump. And here's why. It had nothing to do with his performance or your coronavirus test. The reason she was voting for Trump was because, and these are her words, I don't think Biden is going to live that long, and we can't have a woman as president and a woman as the Speaker of the House. There's just too many women in charge there. Why? Too much estrogen in Washington? I don't understand. For her, 2 women in charge was too many. Never mind the fact that they might be the best candidate, they might have the best ideas. It was just the fact that the possibility of 2 women was too much for her to handle. She's not unique in that. I have a neighbor here where I live who we had this discussion during the 2016 campaign when Hillary Clinton was running, and she said, and I quote, "I don't think a woman should be president ever under any circumstances." Wow. When I asked her why not, she said, well, because this is just not a woman's job, it's a man's job. And this is a woman saying this. This is some misogynistic male, you know, who says, you know, we should be in charge, we're better at this one. This is a woman saying that. You know, it's astounding to me that more women voted for Donald Trump than they did for Mitt Romney, even though Mitt Romney was trying to push some of the women's issues, and he had binders full of women. Remember that comment? But it amazes me. It just does. You know, the Trump campaign started his campaign by saying Mexicans are rapists and they're not sending over their best people. And yet more Mexican people of Mexican heritage, voted for Trump than they did for Romney, who actually has some Mexican heritage where his grandfather was from, and who did his best to court voters, the Mexican voters, or all voters of Latino descent or Hispanic descent. I just find that amazing. Listen, I loved when Obama was our president. I'm a big fan of his. But during his campaign, if he said, look, when I get elected, I'm going to lower the pay scale for black men, he doesn't get my vote. You know, voting is one of the most selfish things you can do. You vote for what's best for you, not for your cousin, not for your community, not for your high school, for you. Who is going to do the best job for you? Listen, in my business, before Trump being president was a personal boon for me because I worked in the business of deportations and he kept us busy. We had so much work before the coronavirus that I didn't know what to do with myself. And since I live in California, we largely ignore some of his more ridiculous policies. Our governor comes on TV 5 minutes after he has a speech and just goes on TV and says, yeah, we're not doing any of that. So I was largely insulated from his foolishness while taking advantage of the job numbers. But I still voted against him, and I would still vote against him again, even without the coronavirus pandemic, only because I'm looking outside myself. Remember, I just said voting is personal, and it is, but he's the exception to that rule because he's so damaging for the nation. He's so damaging for our standing around the world. He's so damaging for our race relations. He's so damaging just overall to our institutions, the FBI, the CDC, the NSA. He's so damaging that we can't survive as a nation. The America that we all knew, the America we all grew up with, we can't survive another 4 years of that. The way the system is set up, we can survive 4 years of any bad president. 8 might be a little bit too much, because if you look at the institutions that he's already diminished, I can't imagine 4 more years of him diminishing the CDC and the FDA and NIH, the FBI, and all the institutions we count on to keep us safe. I think it would be too much. I'll say this one note on my way out, is that this country was founded by very smart men. You know, Hamilton, Jefferson, Washington, all these people. They set up a constitution, a Bill of Rights, gave the ability to add things to the Constitution, amendments. The Declaration of Independence is wonderful. All these things, the way the country is set up, 3 separate branches, it's all good. They made just one mistake. They assumed that greater men, not lesser men, would follow them. In other words, I can't think of everything, but my son will be smarter than me, and he'll add amendments to the Constitution, and his son will be smarter than him. We've had one constitutional amendment since 1973. So you're telling me that the last 47 years, everything's been perfect? Oh, good thing we don't have to amend anything else. We're all good. We've reached perfection in the United States. They didn't assume what actually happened is that they would be followed by cowards. People who have no political courage, whose only allegiance is to the prospect of getting reelected. That's the only mistake they made as far as I can see. In the future, we have to hire people with political courage, or we have to term limit people. There's no reason for people to be in office for 50 years. And that includes Joe Biden. There's no reason for people to be in office that long. Strom Thurmond, I think, was senator for like 52 years or something crazy like that. Public service was not meant to be a job. George Washington, they wanted him to be a 3rd term, 4th term, and then maybe his son would take over and be like a kingdom. He said, no, that was the whole point of getting away from the king we had now. It's not meant to be a job. You know what it's meant to be? You go, you have some ideas you think it might help the country. You run for House of Representatives or whatever, and you spend a term or two there. You run for Senate, maybe you spend a term or two there, and either run for president or go back to your regular life. It wasn't meant to be a job. Like Mitch McConnell and these guys, it's a job. They want to stay there forever. It wasn't meant to be a job. I was never in favor of term limits before 2008, and I see the way some of these people act. They were voting against everything Obama was trying to do, not because it was bad for their district or their state or the country, just because it was politically expedient, and I just want to get reelected, and I don't care if it hurts you. That's what made me change my mind about term limits. This was never meant to be a job, but that's what it is for some of these people. I'm doing whatever it takes to keep my job. All of their decisions aren't based on what's best for you. It's based on what's best for them. If I vote for this, will I get reelected? Not if I vote for this, will it help my constituents? And that's why I'm now in favor of term limits, where I wasn't before. But look, all that to say that, the weekend is coming up. So the next time I talk to you on Monday, it'll be the day before the election. And a lot of early voting stops in some states today. So if you're planning on early voting, you need to get out there right now. Other than that, you have to show up in person November 3rd. Now, you can still use your absentee ballot in most states. When you show up November 3rd, you can still hand it in and it'll still get counted. You don't have to actually go through the whole process of voting. You can say, I have this filled out and just hand it to the person there, or put it in Dropbox or whatever it is. Do not put it in the mail. Way too late for that now. But you can still hand it in person. So if you don't want to wait in line, and you have your absentee ballot, you can fill it out and you can put it in a Dropbox, or you can hand it in person. You don't have to wait in line if you don't want to do in-person voting. Other than that, it really is, you're with America or you're with Donald Trump. I can't say it any easier than that. And that is the plain truth, as I see it. And I am Eric Little. Get out and vote. Have a great weekend. Good night.